Hey there, my name is Maraya Karena, and I am here to share with you some relationship first aid. And this is a toolkit for what you can do when you're not happy with how things are going. So if you're not happy with how things are going, it implies that you had a conscious or unconscious way that you wanted it to go. And this might seem very obvious, but actually I feel that a lot of these conscious or unconscious expectations are often hiding all over our life in all kinds of relationships. So you might have had a way that you wanted your birthday to go, or a dinner, or being reunited with your partner after a trip, or talking to a parent on the phone. And in process work, we call these expectations high dreams, because if you're honest with yourself and you really get curious and give yourself permission to explore your own internal landscape, maybe you can discover that there was this dream, this hopeful way that you wanted it to be, which wouldn't be detrimental in and of itself. But if you find yourself being upset with how things are going, usually what it implies is that what you're reacting to is that your spoken or unspoken expectation, that your vision for your high dream isn't being fulfilled, as opposed to being able to really interact with reality as it is. So let's use the example of you're reunited with your partner after a trip. And maybe if you explore, you discover that you had this high dream that they would greet you and they would have this huge smile and their face would light up and they would give you a big hug. And they would say, "I'm so happy to see you. I missed you so much. Tell me everything." Or maybe you're a different kind of person and you had a high dream that it would be really relaxing and restful and casual, and they'd be like, "Hop in the car, good to see you again." And you would just sort of get to ease back into the practical day-to-day business of living your lives together. We can have all different kinds of high dreams for all different kinds of situations. But if you're upset with how it's going, it probably means that we veered away from how you wanted it to be. And wherever there's a high dream, there's also a low dream. So our low dreams are kind of our worst fears for how things are going to turn out. And interestingly, low dreams can tend to have consistent patterns over time. So it might just seem like a small thing that your partner's not greeting you the way you want to be greeted. But sometimes what happens is it tends to create almost this feedback loop where this little thing starts giving us this feeling that we're in a certain movie where everything that we don't want to have happen is starting to happen. And our low dreams tend to be very connected to our trauma material and a lot of the negative, very bad psychological states that we've been in before. So it's not just that your partner's not greeting you, but you might get into a low dream state where now you're feeling whatever it is, that kind of that story, that trauma story you carry is. Maybe you're feeling abandoned or emotionally neglected, or like you're a failure, or that you're somehow secretly a defective human being. And what's really unfortunate about that is the exact same thing, that instead of responding to the situation as it is, you're now kind of in this self-perpetuating state that can be extremely detrimental. And in either case, if you're in a high dream or a low dream, they both seem to be almost semi-hypnotic states where you're seeing the signals that either the high dream or the low dream is happening, and you're de-emphasizing the other signals. And so it can be a very convincing story about reality. And it has a lot of, it's always like this, it's never like this, my partner's always going to be this way, they're never going to give me what I want, this relationship is never going to be enough for me, I'm trapped in a horrible hell realm that I need to escape. So I think the first thing is know thyself, right? If you're starting to get very upset with how things are going, it's a chance to take a pause and take a break and ask yourself, what was my expectation? What was my hope? How did I want this to go? And just really validate and love that about yourself. That is what you wanted. And then you can also get honest with yourself. The fact that that didn't happen sent me down a different road. Where am I now? What kind of thoughts am I having now? And as much as you can, anchor in something where you're just observing the thoughts, right? You're not in the experience, you're not in the feeling. Sometimes it helps me to kind of think on a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being big alarm bell and 1 being not so bad. Where am I right now? And I'd say if you're just at a 1 or 2 or 3, it might be worth bringing up to your partner, like, oh, I was kind of hoping that it was going to be like this, you know? But if you're anything more than a 3, I think it's a very good opportunity to do some self-soothing, right? Call in something loving, your ancestors or light or your mindfulness practice or whatever it is, and just be like, oh, that's so sweet. That's so sweet that I wanted to be greeted that way. That's really nice. I wanted this big, warm embrace from my partner. And then you say, can I give myself a little bit of a sweet, warm embrace right now? So often we try and work things out in relationship when we're very triggered, but the expectation emerged from you, which means the high dream is your high dream, which means it's also something you're capable of giving yourself. And it's also something that you sort of self-generated that you wanted. And so I think it's a very good skill before we come to relationship conflict to see if you can get yourself a little bit more regulated and in a good place. Right? Give myself that nice warm embrace. That's very nice. And see if that kind of gives you back down to a 1 or a 2, where you can maybe broach that again with your partner. There's no quick fix for high and low dreams. In fact, because they often repeat, because the content of what we want in our high dream and the content of what we want in our low dream is pretty consistent, then what that implies is actually more long-term work. Let's say it's a very common theme for you that you're wanting more warmth and affection from your partner. It might be a good time to reality check and think, are they actually a warm and affectionate person? Is that, if they're not, is that something that they want to be more of? Is it actually in their process to cross more edges and be that way? Or am I asking them to be something that is maybe not true to their nature? Are my expectations compatible with the reality? And then another long-term thing that you can do is have a discussion about this when you're not triggered. Say, hey, when you're not warm and affectionate, it puts me in this place. And that's when all the good self-inquiry work that you've done comes in handy, because you can say, oh, that reminds me I had a very cold mother and I felt very emotionally neglected by that mother. And maybe then when it's happening in the moment, because you've had this conversation about it when feelings have not been running high, you can say, ooh, I'm going to that place again. I'm going to my little child place where I'm feeling very neglected. But ultimately, I do think that there's something about our high dreams, especially when there's a pattern to it, that is somewhat mythic for us in our life. This might land well for you or it might not land well for you, but I honestly believe that there's something in our high dream that we're wanting from the outside, but that we're actually learning to become more of in our life. Let's say you had this cold mother, you're actually working on becoming more warm, more loving, and living that as an entire way of being with yourself, giving yourself that warm embrace when you're feeling down and unmet, an entire way of being with other people, maybe accepting and loving them for who they are, an entire way of maybe living your life and making decisions in a way that's the most embodying of that warm and loving feeling. So it's a good chance to think there are ways to work with this on all different levels, in your personal psychology, in your relationship, and kind of in a long-term understanding of your life. And things, they don't always get solved in the moment immediately with our partner, but we can have a little bit more awareness about what's going on for us and use that awareness to make better choices in the moment and long term. All right, thanks so much, and I hope that was helpful.